You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Chris in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, TV shows, games, books, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 664, our character spotlight on Rotta the Hutt. This is a continuation of our The Mandalorian and Grogu series of episodes. And with me, as always, is Chris. Chris, welcome back to the show. And you took a day off. And
took a day off. Yeah, I went to have some fun at some convention called like Space Con, and had a really good time and met some cool Star Wars people. So, it was a well-deserved day off.
Yeah. Just quickly, anybody that we might know of that you hung out with this weekend?
Yeah, so I got to hang out a significant amount of time, a lot of conversation. We actually did the Riverwalk boat ride together with Charlie Barnett and Iman Esfandi. Charlie Barnett is from The Acolyte, and then of course we know Iman. Yeah, and we know Iman is Ezra Bridger in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a real good time together. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that's awesome, man. Glad you guys got to hang out and down in my hometown too of San Antonio out the Riverwalk. That's a lot of fun. Yeah.
And let me tell you something, everyone was on pins and needles because of the game 5, but unfortunately they weren't able to pull it out, but everyone was just so on pins and needles for that game.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Well, welcome back. We're glad you're back. I managed to cobble a show together last night and talk about issue number 3 of Shadow of Maul, but that's the Patreon show going on there. So, but this is going to be Rotta the Hutt. So the character that has grown immensely, exponentially in terms of popularity, and has become a fan favorite almost overnight, quite honestly, ever since this movie launched. But we're going to get into some of, who he was, how he was portrayed in the movies, and then more speculation on where he might go in the future of Star Wars storytelling. But before we get into all that, how about some shout outs to some very special folks?
Yeah, we would love to give love to our Patreon members, our now part of the tribe level members, Krista Martinelli, Will I Am, my girl Paisley. I got a Brad Feeling, Rita Reborn, Jacob H, Josh C, Uncle Leon, Sharkman Dan, Alejandro, Jackson Abbott, Daz Davies, Risk Bayless, Danny P, Mike Borda, Dante, aka Utini, and Kat, aka Vader's Girl. And then our top tier level Delusions of Grandeur members, my guy, now This Is Rod Racing, Rob G, Steve C, and Vanessa S. Thank you so much for your support of the Cantina Cast. If you know anyone that wants to that is interested in Star Wars podcasts, please spread the word and let them know about us. Let them know that we talk about these topics and we present both sides of certain Star Wars topics. Let them know to follow us on YouTube and social media so that we can grow this base up and try to bring you more excellent content.
Yeah. No, thank you guys. And if you're interested, you can head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon, patreon.com/cantinacast, or you can scan the QR code in the corner of this screen. That'll take you over there. You can sign up for as little as $2 for that. What do we got coming up next couple days, next couple shows, I guess?
Yeah, next couple shows, we got on Wednesday the 17th, we have the breakdown of Shadow of Maul, episode 4. I'm sorry, issue 4.
Issue 4.
Yeah, issue 4. It's going to be a Patreon show, and we're going to break down that issue for you. There's going to be some we're going to talk about the storyline revolving around Lawson and Rena, who was, if you watched Maul Shadow Lord, that was his contact he had, the female that ran the casino type operation. So we're going to give some backstory information that comes from this issue. So look out for that. Again, that's going to be on Wednesday, June 17th, and it's going to be a Patreon only show. Then we're going to come to our 666th episode, numbered episode of the Cantina Cast. And who else are we going to talk about other than our favorite villain of all time, Emperor Sheev Palpatine.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break from our Mandalorian and Grogu coverage here to talk about this one special, pretty dark and bad individual. We're going to break down his character. That's going to be on Sunday, Father's Day, June 21st. So be on the lookout for that. And if you're a dad, hop on and we'll wish everyone a happy Father's Day.
Yeah, that's cool. He's I don't know if that's a good thing that we're doing episode 666 on Father's Day and we're talking about Palpatine. I mean, we can call him Papa Palpatine, right? We'll get into maybe his fatherhood.
Yeah, we could talk about that. And of course,
Yeah.
you know, there's always theories that he's actually the father of Anakin, but
Anakin
you know,
Skywalker, yeah.
he is a grandfather. I mean, he's
Yeah.
Rey's grandfather. So, I mean, yeah, there's a correlation there between old Palps and Father's Day.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to bring that up in there. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that, again, will be a break from the Mandalorian and Grogu series. After that, we'll come back and kind of wrap that up. We've got at least probably another 1 or 2 episodes left to kind of talk about Mandalorian and Grogu. Probably getting long in the tooth now, especially since we're almost, I think, a month, and at that point, we'll be like a month and a half out since the movie had already come out. So we do have a couple more. So don't forget to submit your questions for the free posters that we're giving away. We've got a poster to give away tonight. And if you guys are not familiar with how to submit your questions or how to win a poster, you submit a question to us via social media. It can be Patreon. It can be at hello@cantinacast.com. However you'd like to get your question over to us, we'll answer it on air, and then we'll predetermine the winner by randomly choosing. And we've already predetermined tonight's winner. So we'll announce that at the very end once we get to all the questions. Okay, I think with that, why don't we get into the stinky part of this episode? And let's talk about Stinky, his origin. I want your thoughts first off. This is a little bit off script, but I kind of want your thoughts on the Clone Wars movie. Like, you and I have never probably ever talked about it. I think
I don't think so. No.
Here and there, but
yeah.
I guess what was your experience with that? And then I guess specifically Stinky, the character, knowing that suddenly here's our first Star Wars animated thing. You know, you've got Dave Filoni behind it. You've got George Lucas back in it. And it's a story that revolves around, of all things, Jabba the Hutt's son, Stinky, as we know him. He was named Rotta in there. They did mention it.
Yeah, they did name him. They did have his name as Rotta. I think Ahsoka named him Stinky.
Stinky, yeah, because
Ahsoka. If you guys remember the early seasons of Clone Wars, Ahsoka was the one that gave everyone the nicknames, whether it's Artui or Sky Guy, Stinky. You know, she was the one that did that.
Yeah, yeah. But what's your experience with the Clone Wars movie when you see it? And then I guess any thoughts or comments about, you know, the story revolving around essentially a MacGuffin in a lot of ways, but Stinky being that kind of the character that they're all, you know, trying to save and capture and frame, I guess, if you will.
Well, we, you know, I'm part of the social group here, Fan Force Austin, and we made a big deal about it when that movie debuted. I mean, we'd had a whole event set up at the Alamo Drafthouse South Lamar, at their original South Lamar location. That's how long ago it's been.
Yeah.
And so we were ready to go and we were excited. Me personally, I was disappointed by the movie. I thought it was, the story was very clunky. The dialogue was clunky. The animation kind of fudged in certain places. I wasn't the biggest fan of Ahsoka at the time. I thought she was going to be a throwaway character. I thought she was going to be a character that wouldn't actually survive the series. At the time, I wasn't impressed with Ahsoka at all.
Yeah.
So I was pretty disappointed with that movie, and that really dashed my hopes for the Clone Wars series at the time, because it was hyped up previously at Star Wars Celebration 4, which was held in Los Angeles in 2007, and that's when they debuted the first footage for the Clone Wars with a young Dave Filoni there, and everyone was hyped. I mean, it was a great atmosphere. Everyone was hyped. We loved what we saw there at Celebration 2007. And then it all just fell flat with that movie for me.
Yeah.
And I was
and I don't think you're alone. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was contemplating to just pass on it, really. But because it's Star Wars, you know, me being a hardcore fan, I had to give it a chance. And I did. I drudged through those first couple of episodes of that first season. I drudged through the first season. Then I noticed season 2 started to pick up. And then, of course, we got the masterpiece from that point on, probably from season 3 on. I think we have, one of the most best Star Wars content that has ever been created. So I'm really happy I did that. But that first movie, I was disappointed. It really wasn't for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, it wasn't the best. I mean, I went in like everyone else with high hopes and expectations. It was a period of time where, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet like we have it today. So there really, you were kind of going in that with not a lot of information, right? What you got was on message boards, and a lot of it couldn't have been. Nobody was credible, right? The very few people. There's probably like 5 people that were credible with any kind of rumors and that sort of thing. So
Right.
I think everybody went in with kind of open eyes and open hearts and minds about how the series was going to go. And I think the show itself, the movie itself, was really clunky in terms of dialogue.
Right.
The pacing was kind of weird. I wasn't really 100% like a big fan of the stylized version just yet. Don't get me wrong. Like, technically, that was well above anything that had been done on television before.
Right.
So I kind of went in with all that stuff. I think what really got to me was this idea that, of all things, that all the stories that they could have kicked to kick things off with the Clone Wars, they start with Jabba and
Right.
Jabba's baby, right? Of his child. I was like, what in the world are we doing here? And in some ways, like, now, come full circle with Rotta the Hutt, it all makes sense. I think in some ways, there was things that happened in that when you go back and watch it. I don't know that it's aged any better for me. It's still pretty much just kind of the same. It's there. But it had some great moments. It had some great, at times there were some great moments. It introduced us to a lot of brand new characters for the first time. And it was a perfectly fine way to kick the series off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just never would have thought that Stinky would become kind of like that, again, the MacGuffin of the whole thing. What were we focused on? We're focused on Jabba the Hutt's son. And that begged all kinds of questions of like, well, how did he have a son? Who's the mother? That, never got answered, at least not in canon. We got a whole bunch of legend stories and stuff that would come out a little bit later. But yeah, just this idea that he suddenly had a son. And for anybody that's not aware, I mean, you might as well just talk about it. So in that movie, the whole point of that is that his son has been captured. Rotta has been captured. And as part of being captured, the reason why was because Count Dooku had Ventress go out and kidnap him, or Hutt-nap him, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word.
Hutt-nap him. Yeah.
Hutt-nap him. So Hutt-napped Rotta, and Rotta was, so Dooku was trying to frame, or trying to like make it look like Anakin and the Jedi were responsible for it. So, and the reason why the Jedi were helping the Republic was because they wanted the Hutt support, because that would open up all of the space lanes. And if the space lanes were opened up, it would give them an advantage as part of the war out in the Outer Rim. On top of that, from Dooku's perspective, he was trying to frame the Jedi so that they would go and kill Jabba after all this. And then, it was a very complex, kind of convoluted thing that was going on. But it was just weird that they kind of kicked things off there to begin with. And also, like, we never really got a sense of like how old he was there. He's definitely a baby. Like, he's, pooping his diaper, if you will. There was times, I mean, he was sick throughout the whole movie too, which I had completely forgotten that was kind of one of the things. Like, there was a ticking time bomb going on, because if they didn't get him to a doctor or something quickly, he was going to die. He kept getting worse, progressively worse. His color was starting to change. And eventually it's Ahsoka who actually saves him when they get into one of the ships, and she has like a med pack or something, and she gives him a dose of medication there. But we should also note too that as part of like, he did show up in Clone Wars very briefly. There was I think it was season 3, episode 4. In that episode, there's a moment there where he's sitting there in Jabba's palace, and he's kind of like on Jabba's lap, over by his tail, almost where Salacious Crumb would sit, kind of thing. And they show him very briefly. He's not aged much, of course, at this point. It's only been like a year, not even that. It's probably been like months since the events of the movie. And he's got like a butterfly that he's playing with, and then Jabba yells at him for not, for playing with his food, and then he eats the butterfly, and that's really all we see of him. But this all kind of begs this question. This is where I kind of want to kick things off here. Like, when you think about the Hutts, right? They always talk about how they're horrible people. They're vile. They're the scum and villainy of the galaxy. They're always involved in really nefarious activities. And yet, when you see Jabba and Rhoda, you almost get the sense that Rhoda was like a good dad. Like he loved his son. In that scene where he's,
You mean
uh,
Jabba?
I mean, Jabba, sorry. Yeah,
Mhm.
sorry. The Jabba is like actually loves his son, Rotta the Hutt. Like I never would have suspected that. And there's actually moments, and of course, I know it was a kid's cartoon for all
Mhm.
intents and purposes, but there's moments where he holds him up at the very end after he's been rescued and he's smiling and he's happy that he has his son back. And he definitely was, wanted his son back. I mean, that was the whole point of the mission. And he was ready to go to war and shed blood had he not gotten his
Mhm.
son back, right? But it's just weird to me to think that somebody like Jabba the Hutt, of all people, would be that compassionate or have that kind of love in his heart for his son. But I don't know, there's something warming about that in a kind of disgusting way as well. But what are your thoughts there?
No, I agree with you. I think what I subscribe to as far as a theory, um, so if and I remember that scene from the Clone Wars where again, like you said, Rada was like near the around the end of his tail, like where Salacious Crumb would sit and was playing with the butterfly. I think that the theory that's out there was that Rada remembers Ahsoka and the Jedi's kindness, which I don't know if a typical Huttling, I guess I would call him, would
Hutlets?
see Hutlet. There we
Yeah, I
go.
think it's
We would see at that stage of life. And I think being exposed to that kind of sets the trail for him to be a little bit more kind-hearted than your typical Hutt.
yeah,
And then that one scene, now that I remember it now, myself, it's like a typical dad, like being not strict, but just being very procedural. Hey, don't play with your food and whatnot. And could have that have evolved into Jabba being more strict, seeing that personality wise, Rada is shifting a little bit differently from, the mindset of a typical gangster Hut
yeah,
to somewhat of a Hut who's not like that. And in turn, you know, if Jabba's like any other type of, supreme leader that knows he has an heir, he wants to try to prepare that heir to be that leader.
yeah,
That's where conflict could happen. So that's where I think Rada kind of gets that personality where he's like, yeah, I don't want to be like my dad. I want to be my own person because he is his own person, and he was, he was influenced as a child by Ahsoka and the Jedi, led him down that path of being just a little bit more kind because they were kind to him. And that's how we, again, it's just my own theory, but that's how we got the Rada that we saw in The Mandalorian and Grogu. As far as like birth and where did he come from? Now, I did again. This is all considered legends, I guess, because it hasn't been explained. But we talked about the ability, or we didn't talk about the ability, but we talked about like where did he come from and why is Jabba so happy to see him when he is ultimately rescued? And at the time, because I was curious, right? Because I'd never seen a Hut child before ever. I don't think anyone has. They
right.
might have read about them, but not actually seen one. And so I looked into it, and apparently they're very, very protective of their children because Huts can only reproduce once.
Hmm.
And Rada ultimately was Jabba's going to be Jabba's only child, and if that child was lost, we talk about heir to the whole empire, for play of words anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
different
um,
kind of empire, but yeah,
exactly. Then it would be lost and it would go to somebody like, those stupid twins or somebody who's the other, Zero the Hut or whomever. Um, so I think it was imperative for him to have his son back. And, again, he was very protective of him. As far as how he got there, again, I guess we still should consider this legends type information, but Huts are like some types of frogs that they're not hermaphrodite per se, but they can reproduce asexually. So that was the explanation at the time that Jabba, asexually birthed Rada. And that was the explanation at the time. Now,
yeah,
again, that there was a lot of explanation around that, but we have to take that as legends and non-canon because we really haven't gotten a canon explanation
No,
on
yeah.
Hutts and their physiology and biology and how they do reproduce. So take all of that with a grain of salt, but that's what I read at the time that movie came out.
Yeah. Hut's reproducing. I only have one word, which is bleh. This I was wondering too, like how long would it be before we get into the sexual reproduction of Hutts on this episode? And I marked the time at 20 minutes and 35 seconds.
Time check.
Yep, time check. Man, so and all that's like you're right. It's all legends. We don't know for a fact that they, legends they were hermaphrodites and all of that. We don't have anything canonically of how they reproduce. There was Mama the Hutt, Mama, I think, and she was like was it the grandmother or the great grandmother of Jabba? I think she showed up in one of the episodes. She's a massive, massive Hutt. And so this idea that they have male and female Hutts was kind of, has been a part of Star Wars really this whole time. So I don't know how all this really plays into, whether it's, what's official and what's not. I will say this, they don't have any nipples. And so I wonder if, they're not nursing their kids. So maybe that has something to do with it.
So,
either way.
Again, there's actually an explanation for that. Again, this should be considered legends, but they're like marsupials. They have a pouch, and supposedly Huttlet stays in that pouch and nurses for 50 years before they come out. Again, that is a non-canon explanation. That's a legends explanation. So again, take it as a grain of salt. But at the time, I believe that was the explanation, was that they nurse in a pouch for 50 years.
That's really gross, because I wonder what else is in that pouch for 50 years.
Oh, come on.
I was just looking up. So this book came out a couple years ago. This is an official book that's like it's a canon book now, right? Alien Archive. But they actually have a section in here on the Hutt. So I was like, I wonder, I didn't get a chance to look at this to see if they have anything in here, but I seriously doubt they're going to get into all of that. This is probably more than you wanted on this episode, but I figured it would be fun to talk about because...
Well, I mean, we need to talk about his origins. I mean, we're talking about Rotta's origins, origins.
Right.
So it is relevant.
So that means Jabba would have kept him in the pouch?
Yes.
Well, maybe that's where Salacious B. Crumb goes too. Like, since he's already had his one and done, he's like hanging out there on cold nights on Tatooine.
It could be. Hey, we don't know. Salacious is salacious.
He's he's salacious as well. That's true. On top of that, in that movie as well, you mentioned Zero the Hutt. That was his great uncle, which was Jabba's uncle. And Zero, at the end of the day, as part of that movie, was kind of behind all of this as well. Like, he was hoping this would happen, then he'd kind of rise to power. And so he comes out a little bit later in a couple of other episodes as well. So, I mean, this is really opening our eyes to a whole bunch of, brand new Hutts and the lineage and the legacy of all of that. And we'll talk more about that here in just a second. I did want to just quickly note, too, maybe the last thing is that season 3, episode 4, Sphere of Influence. That's where he has like a little cameo where he's eating the butterfly and all that. That, the very beginning, the words of wisdom thing that happens on that one says, "A child stolen is a hope lost." And I thought, that's interesting that they would put that on the episode that they reintroduce Rotta the Hutt when he was stolen in that first movie. So let's see. One of us a CPU says Churro the Hutt has a sister, so maybe that only once changed thing. Yeah, I think so too. I think that was a Legends thing, and I think they've now made it so that they can have multiple children. But, like a twins as well. Like, I don't know if, were they born at the same time? Are they real twins? Are they just, twins with benefits? I don't know. It's pretty gross. What we were
okay. About yeah, that's. I
mean, they're Hutts. They're worms, Worms need love too, man.
Oh, man.
Okay, so let's talk about his time, I guess, during The Mandalorian and Grogu. Because really, there's a big time jump that happens. We don't really see him much at all in the Clone Wars after that. We suddenly jump to the Mandalorian Grogu. Of course, he's a gladiator now, sitting on Shikari. He's fighting for was it Coin? General Coin?
General Coin, yeah.
Yeah. He's doing that. And the explanation that we've got, and this is on the StarWars.com website, was that he just walked away from all this. Like, after his father's death, he decided that, look, this is not my life. This is not what I want to do. He wants to go live his own life, make his own name for himself. And so He ends up racking up debt, which we don't know how or why. That was never explained. But in order to pay off that debt, he then works for General Coin in this gladiatorial combat thing arena that they've got going on Shikari. So there's a lot of space in there, and there's a lot of questions I think that pop up. Like how did he rack up debt? Was it like financial debt? Was it debt endowed to that person because Coin, I don't know, saved his life, or there was something else? We just don't really know. It's hard for me to think that he did anything nefarious, though. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if he wasn't willing to stick around and be part of that legacy and not inherit everything that corrupt empire that Jabba had, I can't see him doing anything nefariously, right? Or going out and working with loan sharks or having a ton of money that he owns the loan sharks. I just don't see that happening, but maybe he did. I don't know. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's really something that is hard for me to wrap my head around, because the two things that enter my head in regards to the debt was, yeah, a debt, not I want to say a life debt, because that's completely different, but maybe Coin's team did save his life or did something for him, and in turn, this is what he's doing to repay him.
Yeah.
The other thing is he is a horrible gambling addict, and he racked up so many notes that the only way he could repay him was to be a gladiator. I don't think it's the second one, but those are the only two logical explanations based off Rada's personality that I think could have happened. I hope sometime in the future we get that explained in a comic book or a novel or something like that, because that's a very interesting story. And we get that, you know, I guess hot take now, do we really need that Star Wars story? I don't know if we really need that story, but I think it would go a long way to explain why Rada is who he is in this movie. If we know, how did he get into the predicament where he had to essentially put his life on the line fighting to pay off a debt?
Yeah. And I think the general rule, at least for me and maybe for you as well, and in this show in general, is like, yeah, that stuff we don't necessarily need to have,
Right.
but we want to have it. I love to have
Mhm.
that stuff. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change, the storyline. But the additional context is always fun. It's always fun to get to know and familiarize yourself with. So I'd be open to it, but it is something that would probably likely be reserved for like a book. This is kind of ripe for the Rotta the Hutt story before the actual movie, and trying and I think it would sell well. Like, you talk about the fandom that he has now, like we talked about at the very top of the show. There's so many people out there that love this character, and so many people love this character in ways that are not ways that I thought they were going to love this character, honestly. I've seen a lot of hot takes about how, he's hot and he's, jacked up and all that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, he's a good looking guy. I mean, you can see him right there, I guess, for a Hutt, but he's still a worm, guys. Don't forget.
Yeah. Don't forget. He's a nice worm. He's not evil.
Yeah.
He's playful. He likes children. But he is still a Hutt.
And he's still a kid. I want to mention that too. Like, he's still very much a very young adolescent Hutt. Hutts can live, at least in Legends, they could live over like 1,000 years old. I don't know if that's the case in canon. They seem to like pull things back when they get to the canon side of things. Like, okay, maybe that's too much. But there are Hutts that we, living 600, 700, 800 years, probably not uncommon, even in canon, for Hutts to live. So when you think about that and his age coming into this movie, he is, for all intents and purposes, still a child in a lot of ways, maybe an adolescent. I mean, I kind of picture him like maybe a, teenage boy is probably where I would throw him.
That's the vibe that I got, that he is a teenage boy.
Yeah.
But he is a Hutt, which means he's huge and he's jacked.
Yeah. He's still got that playful spirit, right? He's still got a good heart. He still wants to do things that are best for other people. And, he still wants to make a name for himself. He feels like, he's still got a lot to do there to kind of set himself apart from his father, or the legacy of the Hutts and all that. So it seems about right. I mean, this is a very earnest and honest character that I really hope they do explore, later down the road, because they did give us a lot. And kudos to, was it Jeremy Allen White who did the voice?
Jeremy Allen White, the bear, Bruce Springsteen. Yep.
Yeah. He did a great job, man. He really did. He did a good job. And it was just voice, and I know they synthesized a lot of it and did that stuff, but you can sense there's a lot of like passion and compassion that comes out in his portrayal of the character, even though it was just voice acting for him.
No. Yeah. I thought he did a great job. For it being, I think it might've been his first voice over role. I think he did a great job.
Yeah. So he doesn't want any part of this legacy. And I know we talked about, I mean, I got the sense that Jabba was a good parent. I don't have no reason to believe that he wasn't a good parent. That doesn't necessarily mean that a child grows up thinking that, hey, my dad's awesome. You know what I mean? Like you can, like, to other people, right? If you think about it in our own terms, you might have a situation where somebody is kind of like a gangster and does some really horrible things, but they're a good parent. And maybe that's, the child sees it as that and is able to kind of separate the two. That's kind of where I felt like he was going with this and saying he doesn't want to be defined by that legacy. They talked a little bit about this in the Bloodline novel by Claudia Gray, where Leia was having to separate herself, right? When they found out that she was the daughter of Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader, she was like, they wanted to put her out on a cross. And a lot of people did not want to trust her anymore. She had, it was a bad omen. She had bad blood in her. And so it made it very difficult for her in her role in the New Republic. And a lot of that is what kind of pushed her away to kind of move into kind of like the resistance area side of things. So there is a lot to be said about legacy and having somebody that has, these sins of the father that you have to live in the shadow of. And certainly we don't know everything that Jabba did, but we're led to believe that he was he was kind of like the biggest crime lord that we've had from the Hutts in quite a while. So yeah, there are probably a lot of skeletons in that closet. And so I can see where he'd really want to get away and do all that. And what better way to do that than to just go and, maybe there was a part of him that just felt like, I'm going to go in these gladiatorial battles. And, if I die, I die. Like, who cares? Like, at least I'm living my life and I don't have to worry about anybody. No one's going to care about any of the stuff that my dad did, because all they're going to care about at the end of the day is whether or not I, drew blood and killed whoever it was that I was fighting.
Right.
That seems like a very easy thing to adopt. I think something to execute on, no pun intended, and really not have to worry about all the other stuff. Like, he didn't try to go into politics, or he didn't try to, take on his father's empire and churn it around and have to deal with all that. It's like a very clean way to break away from all that and just kind of make a name for himself in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is really like an escape for him. And, I'm
That's a
going
good way to
to
look at it.
yeah, I'm going to go, we've seen, like a supreme leader, ruler, gangster, trying to prepare his heir. Like I mentioned it earlier in the show, prepare his heir to take over eventually, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's what Jabba would have intended for Rotta. So I can only imagine that he probably saw some horrible stuff. I mean, we talk about how bad Jabba the Hutt was, and of course they've had like a vague backstory for him all the way back to 1983 in Return of the Jedi, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, they called him the vile gangster Jabba the Hutt, right?
Right.
Vile's not a really soft word,
Right.
but the reputation kind of precedes him because Rada mentions that at the beginning when he first started fighting, everyone knew who he was and was like booing him because the populace probably knew Jabba was a pretty horrible guy. Din Djarin said he tried not to cross Jabba, and Din Djarin don't give a f. If he had to do something, he did it. If he was on a job for a bounty, he'd do it. And when he said, I tried not to cross Jabba the Hutt, Jabba's a bad man. So, I think you go back to, again, what we talked about earlier, being rescued by Ahsoka and the Jedi, I do firmly believe that just changed his mindset and changed, how his personality would be fashioned. And so now he doesn't want that, and he, I'm sure he's seen the atrocities Jabba has done as his son. He just doesn't want that. So I see what he's doing now as an escape, just to say, hey, I can get out from under this, and be my own man, which he said multiple times in that movie. And I think that's what happened here and why he did what he did.
Yep. So one of the things when we look forward now, honestly, that we could sit here and speculate on all kinds of things, quite honestly, and may or may not be fun, but I do want to move forward and just kind of talk about the future a little bit. And we've talked about this, and some of this has come up from some of the questions that folks have asked about the future of Rotta the Hutt and, where does he go from that? We know he's going to join the New Republic, Before we get into that, though, I have made mentioned that there have been Hutts in the past, all Legends characters, but in the past we've had Hutts that have been part of the Republic or helped the Republic and or the Jedi in some way. And so I just want to kind of throw out some I've got 3 examples. There are more examples. I mean, there's not a huge amount of these. And I will say a lot of the Hutts, when you look them up, that were good and allied themselves with the Republics, they span like thousands of years before you get another one that kind of surfaces up to the top and becomes, famous and really helpful, of course. But so there was one called Supreme Chancellor Bloatus. Now, this is from Star Wars: The Old Republic, which I still play. Thank you. And this is like 8,000 to 9,000 BBY. So this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he was like the Supreme Chancellor. And he comes up in the game. He's only mentioned, and then there's like a holocron thing or archives thing that you can go to, and you can read about him and stuff like this. Again, this is all legend stuff, but the way it reads is like he was like the Supreme Chancellor. Think about that. He's like the Supreme Chancellor, the guy that's in charge of all the Republic. And for, I don't know, I think it was like a couple hundred years, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but it was a pretty significant amount of time. And he was very, very successful and very well liked, very charismatic. And when you look at like the way they talk about that era of time when he reigned as Supreme Chancellor, it was like the glory years, right? Peace and prosperity. So they're not predispositioned to be absolutely horrible people. I think they have a tendency to go there, but you have some of these characters like Bloatus who kind of break out from time to time. There's another one that comes up in the game, and this one's kind of like it's more current. This Hutt is alive while you're playing the game, and he's head scientist Ogorob. He's part of the Eternal Alliance, and I'll just give me one quick second and I'll explain what the Eternal Alliance is. But at some point, the Empire, or I guess what would you call like the Galactic Empire of the time back then? This is about 3,600 BBY, right? But so the Galactic Empire and the Republic actually come together and they form the Eternal Alliance, and they're going up against somebody who's really bad, and that's not really important. But what it did is it brought together people that were on the side of that aligned themselves with the Sith and those that aligned themselves with the Jedi, and they were all working together for a period of time. And so this brought this particular Hutt in, and he was kind of a master scientist. And so he worked for both the Empire and the Alliance because they were working together. But he was a great character, and he was somebody that was super helpful. He was always coming up with inventions and figuring out really ways. He was like super intelligent. He had like a little monocle piece and was all hooked up to kinds of computers and stuff. But again, another character that stood out. And then if you're familiar with like the Legends books, fast forward to 13 ABY, you've got Jedi Beldorian. So he's like the only that I'm aware of. There could be others, but I don't think there's another one. But he's the only Hutt Jedi that ever existed. And to think that there was a Jedi that was that nimble, and he was a lot slimmer. Again, this was Legends, so the way they kind of portrayed him, he was almost he almost looks more snake-like than he did slug-like, to kind of give him some of that mobility to kind of move around. But I mean, you have somebody that's not only a good person, but they're actually following the light. So to have Rotta the Hutt come out of this movie and suddenly take a position with the New Republic isn't uncalled for. Like, it's not the first time we've seen it. I think where I'm challenged is I like, in one half of my head says I would love to see him and Grogu go off and do things together. And don't get me wrong, there's hundreds of years that they're going to be alive together or alive around that same time together. So there are opportunities where they could bow out and do that for 100 years and then go their separate ways and maybe come back in 200 years or whatever. But there's that one part, there's part of that. But then there is the other part that says, he is a Hutt. And outside of the exception, which was Beldorian, most of the Hutts aren't very mobile, right? They get relegated to kind of stationary positions of power. They're not, called upon to suddenly be defenders of the galaxy and go on these crazy missions that are dangerous because they're so big. You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of like physical things that keep them from doing all that. Now, Rotta the Hutt has certainly proved that he's able to hold his own. He can, he squash people if he wants to. He's wielding, 2 blades at one time.
He has that barrel roll.
He can do a barrel roll, but that's all confined to like an arena.
Yep.
I don't know how that's going to do when suddenly they've got to go traverse up a mountain or, running through the streets. I mean, even he himself had to he jumped into a vehicle mostly to get away fast or whatever, but he had to pull the seats out of that thing, right? They didn't accommodate him. So there are some physical challenges that I think exist for that. So I guess where I'm going with this and where my lead up is, if you had your choice between seeing them pair up, Grogu and Rotta, would you like to see that more? Would you like to see him more of a, I don't know, kind of like a general, maybe a combative kind of person that leads folks in the New Republic? I don't know. Where do you think he ends up?
So, I mean, I understand the physical limitations that Hutts have, from based on what we've seen from the movies, canon movies, and well, all movies are canon, but the movies and like canon literature, comic books and novels and whatnot. But to be fair, we saw him get around pretty good, whether he commandeered a speeder or, just hot or slugged it wherever he needed to go. He was able to get to where he wanted to go. I don't obviously, they made the comment about I'm too big to, or the comment that I'm too big to fit in the cockpit, can't even fit in there. So
Yeah.
he acknowledges his size, but I still hold on to my theory that with this movie is the beginning of the end of Din Djarin's story, and at the end of Din's story, we're gonna have the beginning of the story of Rada and Grogu, and so I think he's going to be the one that's going to be accompanying Grogu throughout his adventures after the Mandalorian hangs it up one way or another. Uh, and I think the story will just have to accommodate Rada getting around, whether it's interstellarly in starships or traversing terrain or something. He's going to have to, they're going to have to, include it in the story on how he does that. But I think ultimately that's what we're going to get. We're going to get Rada and Grogu, and they're going to move forward with, Grogu's story, Rada's story when Din is story is over.
Yeah. And I'm with you. Like that's to me is way more exciting than Rada, General Rada, who just sits like an Admiral Akbar, tethered to a chair in some, huge ship. And we don't really get to see him other than anything, do anything other than just kind of bark orders. I get it. Like that seems way more exciting. Plus the prospect, right? It feels like they've kind of, laid those seeds to say that, look, at some point these two are going to pair up, especially if that scene on the beach there where they were playing with each other and that sort of thing. So I get it. Like that feels like the right way to go. And maybe it's just a suspension of disbelief, right? Or they do some really fancy CG work or whatever they're using at the time to kind of show and explain all this, or maybe it becomes a non-explanation and we just have to accept that it is. But that would be the only thing that I would see that would block it.
I read a theory, and this doesn't apply to all terrain, right? I just read a theory that Hutts can also slide on their stomachs like penguins can, like down hills, and then they get momentum, and that gets them going over the next one, and they go up and down, and they can slide on their belly like that. I read a theory that they do that. Again, I don't know if we've read anything like that in any canon material, but that's a theory.
Well, that could be. I wouldn't, and very nice of them to have used the word seal, because to me that would be more of a walrus that would actually be doing that, not a seal.
I said penguin.
Oh, oh my gosh! Well, even worse. Yeah, penguins. Yeah, not. I don't know what kind of penguins this guy's looking at, but I've never seen penguins like that. Mumbo Jimbo joined us. He says Rada's admission that he couldn't fit into the Razor Crest cockpit was charming. And then Vanessa, when we were talking about Supreme Chancellor Bloda, she said that was her after Taco Bell. That's good. I like that.
Hey, but Taco Bell is delicious. So
Taco Bell is very good.
Yes.
But so celery. So anyways,
I'm sorry. I'm against you there. Celery is just glorified grass. That's all celery is.
It's terrible. Nobody eats that stuff.
No.
But yeah, we were talking about how he would actually get around. And maybe that is one way to do it. I think one other thing that would be really interesting to see is if we did have, we talk a lot about what would it be like if they reunited later down the road. I want to see Ahsoka reunite with Rada, because she was actually one of the ones that was very like endearing to him, and she was the one that was carrying him around, and she really liked him. She thought he was cute and sweet, and they had their little moments and all that during the movie. But it would be interesting to see him actually meet up again with Ahsoka, and just kind of reminisce about that stuff. There was a line actually that I remember. Excuse me, when I was watching the movie again, I meant to write it down, I didn't, but there was a line that I was like, oh, that'd be hilarious if they came back and used that line. Kind of like the Sky Guy thing. It was one of those things where it was just a little kind of a mention or whatever. But
Stinky,
Stinky, yeah, maybe that's what she says. Like she calls him Stinky or something. That would be really cute. But
that's a good that would be a good storyline, because essentially that would bring Filoni's story full circle.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah,
yeah. I think Dave Filoni, if you're hearing us right now, we thought of this idea today, June 15th, 2026. So give us credit, or give Albert credit. He's the one that came up with the theory. I think that would be pretty amazing, because then that's essentially the bookend of Ahsoka's story. She starts here with Stinky. She reunites with Rotta as he's in his adolescent form of Hutt, and they go on an adventure with Grogu.
With Grogu, yeah.
Or maybe not. Yeah.
Maybe Rhoda has his own child somewhere down the road, and Ahsoka's still around, and so he needs help. And who does he call? He calls up Ahsoka, and Ahsoka helps him to get his child now. So
yep.
I don't know. That seems kind of cliche.
That was a good one. That's a good one, Albert.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun to actually see them reunite more than anything. But yeah, the other like logistical things that I have are like, what does he look like in his uniform? Because Zeb is like, hey, I got a uniform that'll fit him, over there. And I'm thinking, who the heck wore that uniform that suddenly a Hutt can just jump right into, and it's going to fit? And does it go like, is it kind of like, does it cut off at the waist? Does it go extend down his tail? I don't know. I got to see this uniform. They've already teased us with it, so I'd love to see it. But
it made me think of the Green Lantern Corps member, who's essentially a big worm, and that's with a single eye. I forgot the character's name, but yeah, he essentially has the Green Lantern. The ring is on the top of his worm head, and he has the eye, and then the uniform like goes over like a quarter or maybe a third of his body, and then the rest is worm. That's what I thought of immediately when Zeb said, "Hey, I got a uniform for you."
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Well, again, I'm being silly, and those are trivial things, but I kind of have to know now that they brought it up, not me. Sorry. I do need to know. I don't know. What else do you want to talk about? What else is there to talk about with Rotta the Hutt? I mean, it was fun just to kind of to reminisce about his origins, and I know we've spent a lot of time already talking about where potentially he could go into the future with all this stuff. I think it's safe to say that he is coming back. I will say that I don't think they would have done this movie and brought him in and made him a part of this without the intent to bring him back again somewhere down the road. I think it was more than just Dave Filoni going, oh, here's a character that I started off with. I will point this out too, just quickly, for the people that don't know, Rotta the Hutt and Jabba the Hutt were supposed to be regular members of the original series of the Clone Wars when they first pitched it, and they had the story treatments. They were going to be main characters just like Anakin and Ahsoka and stuff. I wouldn't say they're going to be in every episode, but they were going to be pivotal in some ways. Eventually, as the development of those stories went on, they kind of took a back seat, and they put a lot of that into the Clone Wars movie. And then, of course, we had a couple cameos here and there throughout the series. So that kind of went away. So you kind of get the sense that Dave Filoni does have a heart for this character, considering that he was going to originally have him as part of the series. So again, more reasons to think that this wasn't just coincidental that we get him in this movie, that he will show up in later content down the road. And I'm for it. I really do want to see him. Hopefully we get Jeremy Allen White back as well.
Yes.
To voice him and keep everything the same. But I've really enjoyed the character a lot. And I know some people have enjoyed him in different ways more than I have. But to each their own, man, whatever.
Well, I give him credit that Ludwig was able to come up with a pretty slamming theme for Rotta.
Yeah.
So I added that to my workout playlist because it slams pretty hard. So I'll give him credit for that. But I think, I don't know if Dave maybe had an outline of a story for Rotta after his Clone Wars debut. But if he doesn't, this was a pretty good reach. I know sometimes when you reach back into your catalog of unused characters, aka like or characters that aren't used a lot, I think we kind of saw two of them here with Embo and Rotta. I think if this wasn't planned like or sketched out like on a notepad somewhere or a napkin on an idea on how they could bring Rotta back into the story, I want to give credit to Filoni and Favreau for doing a pretty good reach back into the storyline to bring him back here. It was done really well, and I thought the character that they created was a very, very good character. And again, a lot of us believe that he's going to be essential moving forward, and I hope that's the case.
Yep, me too, 100%. All right, well, with that, let's see. Oh, here you go, Oliversity. Oliversity is the Worm Lantern.
Oliversity, there we go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, typical. I figures one up versus EP would be the one that comes in with that. All right, so let's get to our questions, and we only have one question, and so we only have one winner this week. Yay. And partly that's my fault because I forgot to advertise it, so I don't know that a lot of people had this on the radar. I didn't do it on social media and that sort of thing. So, and if we missed your question, because Chris and I were kind of going through social media and looking at things, and we didn't see anything else, but if we missed it, please let me know. Reach out to me, and maybe we'll get you we've done this in the past where we gave somebody like a double entry the next week. Mm-hmm. But anyways, the winner is Adam Jung because he's the only one that submitted a question. His question is actually something we've already answered, which is, he says, my question this week is what kind of role or job should Rotta have in the New Republic? May the Force be with you. And so I don't know. We don't need to add anything else to that. I think we've kind of beat that horse or the Hutt to death at this point. But thank you for the question, Adam. And congratulations on the poster. I'll reach out to you, get your address, get that in a tube mailer, and you'll get that poster here shortly. So appreciate that.
Excellent.
I think that's it. So don't forget before we get out of here, we'll be back here in 2 days. We're going to talk about issue number 4 of Shadow of Maul. And this is the backstory between Lawson and Rena. These are the two, they're both bounty hunters. We knew during the series that there was something going on there. Maybe they were lovers, maybe they weren't. We know they definitely worked together at some point. Well, we get a lot of that information in this backstory that is relevant to the overall story because it involves a pod race that happens on Janix every year. So that's been fun. That'll be a Patreon exclusive on Wednesday. And then this Sunday, we are going to do the episode 666 and talking about Father Palpatine for the first time formally on this show. And so that'll be a lot of fun to kind of discuss him, his antics, and just how horrible of a person he is.
Very bad.
Very bad. But before we go, how about some shout outs to the folks that joined us tonight on the live stream?
Sure. Thank you all for joining us. We have One Up versus CPU, Music Train 1, my girl Vanessa, aka Strong Mustachio, my Star Wars guy, Riley 268, and Mumbo Jimbo. Thank you so much for joining us on this live stream tonight of the Cantina Cast.
Yep. And if you haven't had a chance, please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you've not subscribed. That would really be appreciated, and click the bell. That way you get the notification anytime we go live. So again, on Wednesday for the Patreon show, and on behalf of myself and Chris, we'll see you guys very soon. Thanks for being here.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.